Tonight, the most dangerous kind of weather. Heat warnings go up for millions of Americans.
As a matter of fact, they are dropping like flies even as we talk.
Elaine Quijano is with emergency responders in New York. Dean Reynolds visits the most vulnerable among us in Chicago. And we'll have a look at how long this will last. With more strength in the economy, what will happen to interest rates? Carter Evans in Los Angeles on a real estate frenzy. Under the Dome, a city with air pollution so severe, children play under a protective bubble. Seth Doan takes us there. And a salute to the Fighting 54th. David Martin remembers the first Black American regiment on the 150th anniversary of the day they changed the Army.
They saw it as an opportunity to show that they were the same kind of patriot as everyone else.
This is the CBS Evening News with Scott Pelley.
Good evening. Misery had plenty of company today. The country is suffering through the most widespread heat wave of the season. The combination of heat and humidity made it feel like the temperature was in triple digits in the places that you see in darkest red. 100 in New York City, 102 in Washington, D.C., 103 in Baltimore, 105 in Detroit. Here's why it's so hot. A dome of high pressure has settled over the eastern half of the country like a hot, wet blanket, and it's not moving. Heat and humidity are very dangerous. In fact, they kill hundreds of Americans every year, more than tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, and lightning combined. We have two reports tonight. First, Elaine Quijano with first responders in New York. Elaine?
Well, Scott, this is the fourth day of the heat wave here in New York. At this hospital and others, they're starting to see more people succumb to the heat. We were with this ambulance crew for just 2 minutes before they got their first heat-related call. Rocky Robinson heads up the team in Brooklyn.
As an EMT, we really have to watch out for heat stroke, heat exhaustion. As a matter of fact, they are dropping like flies even as we talk. My units are very, very busy.
In Philadelphia, which had its hottest day of the year so far, the city has activated its heat emergency hotline. St. Luke's Roosevelt Hospital in New York City is treating patients for dehydration and heat stroke. Dr. Jeffrey Raybridge says they're averaging about a dozen patients a day. He expects more.
This heat wave, it's been staying hot at night, and we've been seeing problems with that, particularly respiratory problems.
And every day that this heat wave continues,
the risk is higher. Each day of added heat increases the risk that we're going to see more people with both heat stroke and the respiratory problems.
St. Luke's Roosevelt Hospital has added EMS units and doctors to help deal with the expected increase in heat-related cases. Scott, this heat wave is expected to last through Saturday.
Elaine, thanks. Now to Chicago. In the Windy City, there was barely a puff of air. Dean Reynolds is there. Dean?
Scott, with temperatures here stuck in the 90s for the next few days, air quality in this area is becoming a concern.
It's almost like shooting through milk, so it is really thick out here.
Meteorologists tell us it feels like it's 100 degrees here, and there's little argument about that as people seek relief any way they can. 18 years ago, more than 400 people died in a heat wave here, and a subsequent study of what went wrong urged healthcare workers to be more attentive to the sick.
Are you worried about people being socially isolated at a time like this?
Absolutely, because we have a lot of elderly patients and they live alone.
Maria Montesanto, a Loyola University nurse, will make 20 visits this week to patients like 90-year-old Mary McLemore.
First of all, keep hydrated, drink adequate amount of fluids.
She's ill, she's elderly, and she's isolated.
Correct.
Those are not great factors.
No.
The air quality in nearby Indiana is already classified as unhealthy now, and as hot as it is here, Scott, the heat and humidity will make it feel like 105 over the next couple of days.
Not much of a break before the weekend. Dean, thanks very much. The housing industry has hit a pothole along the road to recovery. The Commerce Department said today that home construction fell sharply last month as mortgage rates, while still low, are starting to rise. And Congress was anxious to know today where the Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke sees the economy going and what the Fed plans to do about it. Here's Carter Evans.
The committee will come to order.
Chairman Bernanke spent 3 hours explaining the recovery is still fragile.
Our goals are jobs, our goals are low inflation, and I think we've had not all the success we would like, but we've had some success.
The Fed's purchase of $85 billion in government bonds each month from commercial banks has increased the money those banks have available for business loans. The Fed's purchases have also reduced the supply of bonds in the financial system. That's pushed interest rates lower, especially for home buyers.
Oh, it's a big kitchen.
Phyllis Harb was one of 45 California real estate agents looking at this home today in Glendale. She says low mortgage rates have created a buying frenzy in Southern California. What concerns you about the market right now?
Well, I'm concerned how quickly prices are increasing and how difficult it is for first-time buyers to gain entry into the housing market. There was a home in Glendale recently that had 80 offers. It sold for $110,000 over asking price.
Bernanke had pledged to stay the course at least until unemployment drops to 6.5%. It's 7.6 now. Stephanie Nance was among 115 new hires at a computer assembly plant in Whitsett, North Carolina.
I sent my resume in, and about 2 weeks later, I got a phone call. It was nerve-wracking, but they gave me the chance, and so far, I really, really like it.
Right now, the economy is only creating about 200,000 jobs a month. And Scott, that is barely enough to keep up with new entrants to the workforce.
Carter Evans in our Los Angeles newsroom. Thanks, Carter. There were grave doubts in Congress today about surveillance programs that were exposed by National Security Agency computer technician Edward Snowden, those programs that capture phone and internet records. The eavesdropping agency got an earful from skeptical House members. And here's Nancy Cordes.
Because I believe this is totally unprecedented and is way beyond the statute.
Democrat Gerald Nadler spoke for many on the House Judiciary Committee from the left and the right. They argued the National Security Agency had gone too far with its blanket collection of Americans' phone records and foreign internet communications. California Democrat Zoe Lofgren.
But I think that very clearly this program has gone off the tracks legally and needs to be reined in.
The deputy director of the NSA argued the controversial surveillance programs are consistent with Section 215 of the Patriot Act, which allows the government to order anyone to hand over, quote, any tangible things, so long as the order is related to an authorized investigation. But Republican James Sensenbrenner, a co-author of the Patriot Act, argued Section 215 is being abused.
And unless you realize you got a problem, that is not going to be renewed.
Many lawmakers, including the committee's chairman, Robert Goodlatte, expressed frustration that they were left in the dark about these programs. Robert Litt, general counsel at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, said that was intentional.
The decision was made that this is the sort of sensitive source and method that we don't want to disclose.
Do you think a program of this magnitude, gathering information involving a large number of people involved with telephone companies and so on, could be indefinitely kept secret from the American people?
Well, we tried.
The administration points out that the relevant congressional committees were briefed on these programs and signed off on them. But obviously, Scott, the House Judiciary Committee was not among them. And that's the committee that writes surveillance laws. And many members now say those laws need to be changed.
Nancy, thank you. Well, intelligence came through in one area. It turns out the most dangerous branch of al-Qaeda admitted today that its #2 leader was killed in a U.S. drone strike. Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula has been behind the most sophisticated attempts to attack America in recent years. It operates in Yemen and is trying to overthrow the government there. Bob Orr tells us about the leader who was killed.
Saeed al-Shiri was a jihadi disciple of Osama bin Laden and trained with al-Qaeda fighters in Afghanistan before 9/11. Al-Shiri was captured in December 2001 and sent to Guantanamo Bay. In 2007, he was released to his homeland, Saudi Arabia. And just 2 years later, al-Shiri was back in the terror business, helping to form the Yemen-based terror group, Al-Qaeda, in the Arabian Peninsula. As AQAP's number 2, al-Shiri was an operational commander and right at the center of a series of bomb plots targeting the U.S. In December 2009, AQAP put an underwear bomb aboard a passenger jet headed to Detroit. In 2010, the group planted bombs aboard 2 U.S.-bound cargo planes. And in 2012, a follow-up underwear plot was disrupted by U.S. and British intelligence. While none of the plots succeeded, AQAP demonstrated stronger operational abilities than the remnants of bin Laden's original group. Al-Shiri's group has also motivated lone wolf attacks inside the United States, most recently the Boston bombings. Investigators say the Tsarnaev brothers built their bombs with guidance from AQAP's online magazine, Inspire. Now, U.S. officials say al-Shiri's death does not end the threat from AQAP, but his replacement, Scott, will be hard to find. Relentless drone strikes have greatly thinned al-Qaeda's leadership ranks.
Bob, thanks. There is outrage in Boston after folks there got a look at the cover of the latest issue of Rolling Stone. It features what many took to be a glamour shot of the man charged in the marathon bombing, Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. At least 5 retail chains are refusing to sell the magazine. In a statement, Rolling Stone did not address the criticism of the picture, but it defended its decision to write a profile of Tsarnaev. The magazine said, "Our hearts go out to the victims of the bombing." We're going to take you to a city where breathing is hazardous. Dozens of children were killed by a poison in their school lunch. An unthinkable tragedy is unfolding in India. At least 25 school children have died after their free school lunch was contaminated with a poison. This father grieved for his daughter, who was among the dead. Dozens of students survived, but they fill a hospital ward, some of them in serious condition. Tests show that the food contained organophosphates, which are used in pesticide. Investigators don't know yet how or why this happened. Parents in Beijing worry about sending their children out into the city air. A new study by the National Academy of Sciences says that air pollution in northern China is so hazardous it shortens lives by 5.5 years on average. Seth Doan's report starts at the gates of Beijing's famed Forbidden City.
Murky smog can choke this entire city, cutting off sunlight for days. It makes breathing as dangerous as inhaling secondhand smoke. On these days, Mindy Wu makes sure her 5-year-old wears a mask to school.
Everybody can see it. Everybody can even smell it.
You can smell the pollution?
I think every mother has a dog's nose.
People here check air quality readings as routinely as others check the temperature. Even what passes for a relatively good day, like today's reading, is still 5 times worse than the most polluted city in the U.S., Riverside, California.
Last winter, the numbers went off the chart. There were at least 38 days when the air quality was so bad that state media warned residents to stay indoors. The smog is made worse by the coal-fired power plants that ring the capital, spewing out sulfur dioxide and pollutants that can cause lung disease. It turns mothers like Mindy into amateur scientists.
You know, PM10 is a technical term, which means the particle is bigger.
You know the size of particles?
We know in some level, yes.
At the International School of Beijing, pollution tops parents' concerns.
They would want routine measurements of the air quality in their son or daughter's classroom, in the gymnasium. Some even have asked for bus readings. This right here
Garrick Monroe is the school's chief operating officer. He showed us this $5 million dome built to enclose a playground and filter air.
Parents were concerned, given the, at times, 10 to 15 days in a row that our kids would be inside and not released for recess, that we needed to have another option.
The school spends roughly $150,000 a year on air filter systems. But the average Beijinger cannot afford that. Mindy Wu has a single $120 air filter in her bedroom.
I'm worried, I have to say.
Have you ever thought of moving to a less polluted place?
Honestly, yes, but it's not a kind of easy decision to make because moving your home is like, moving your whole life to another different place.
The Chinese government set targets for heavily polluting industries to reduce emissions by 30% in 5 years. It's an effort to prevent Beijing from becoming a modern-day forbidden city no one dares to enter. Seth Doan, CBS News, Beijing.
There's been a final decision in a custody fight for a 3-year-old, a fight that reached the Supreme Court. That story is next. We have an update now on a child custody battle that went all the way to the United States Supreme Court. It involves a 3-year-old girl named Veronica. When her mother placed her up for adoption, her biological father, a member of the Cherokee Nation, sued for custody. He cited a federal law intended to keep Native American families together. But last month, the justices ruled that the law did not apply and sent the case back to South Carolina. Today, that state's highest court gave custody of Veronica to a couple who had been trying to adopt her. There may be a break in a multi-million-dollar art heist, but not the one police were hoping for. In October, thieves stole 7 paintings from a Dutch museum, including a Picasso and a Monet. 3 suspects were arrested in Romania, but what about the paintings? One suspect's mother said she burned them, and she may be telling the truth. Today, a museum director said ash from her oven contains paint, canvas, and nails. Earlier this month, America marked the 150th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg. This week, there are commemorations for a lesser-known Civil War battle, which began 150 years ago tomorrow. It did not have the strategic importance of Gettysburg, but as David Martin tells us, it was a turning point in American history.
The Battle of Fort Wagner, South Carolina, was a defeat for the Union Army, but a galvanizing victory for freedom. The flag bearer for the 54th Massachusetts Regiment was an escaped slave named William Carney. Carl Cruz is his great-great-grandnephew.
When I think of what Sergeant Carney did and his fact that duty was so important, even at a time when the country did not feel that he was a man, that was really pretty powerful.
Carney and hundreds of other African Americans enlisted in the 54th after President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. The men of the Union's 1st Black Regiment went south to fight, knowing that if they were captured, they could be sold back into slavery.
They saw it as an opportunity to show that they were the same kind of patriot as everyone else that was fighting for their country.
In the battle, dramatized in the 1989 movie Glory, nearly half the 54's 600 men were casualties.
Even though they lost the battle, the 54th won everyone's respect because they proved that African Americans could be exemplary soldiers.
Sarah Greeno is curator at the National Gallery of Art, which is preparing an exhibition about the regiment, including the first Medal of Honor ever awarded to an African American.
And then here's Carney with his Medal of Honor.
Although shot 3 times, Carney never let the colors fall.
He said, "Boys, the old flag never touched the ground."
Like everything else in the march toward equality, the medal was a long time coming.
Carney did not receive his medal until 1900.
He received it in the mail. It was sent to him to his home in the mail.
Battles in 1863, the medal arrives in the mail in 1900.
37 years later.
150 years later, you can see the 54th's place in the long arc toward justice.
Where would you put the 54th Regiment in the history of the Civil Rights Movement?
I put it right up front, like the March on Washington.
Sergeant William Carney lies buried in his family plot in New Bedford, Massachusetts. His tombstone has been chipped away by souvenir hunters, but he is still right up front. David Martin, CBS News, New Bedford, Massachusetts.
And that's the CBS Evening News for tonight. For all of us at CBS News all around the world, good night.
Closed captioning is proudly sponsored by Citracal.